If you've ever been to one of the bigger German cities like Cologne or Hamburg, you may have noticed the lack of older buildings that cities like Paris or London have. Sure, monuments are still there, but not many buildings where actually people can live in. If you wonder why that is, you're right here. I'm going to explain it to you right in this video here. So sit down and relax and enjoy. In World War I, some cities had been targeted by bombers, but it was very ineffective, since most bombs had to be dropped by hand. It would have taken months for these guys to bomb the whole city, and since their targeting technology was not much more than the mix of eyesight, guessing, and luck, the first bombings were somewhat of a military failure, and bombing of cities was quickly abandoned, at least for now. In the 1920s, Italian General Giulio Douhet came up with the theory that, in order to shorten the next war, the Air Force should target so-called vital centers. That included homes, markets, and every important building that could be used in civilian life. Every kind of bomb should be used, even poison gas bombs. Douhet's idea behind this theory was that the war would become so terrible that the common people would rise up against this government and overthrow it in a revolution, suing for peace after that. This theory would be tested in real-life war on the 26th of April 1937 during the Spanish Civil War, which had been raging on for nearly a year on this point, in the Basque town called Guernica, who were sent there by Nazi Germany to aid the nationalist cause, and to test in real conditions the tactics and material. The real targets of the bombardment were bridges and roads, to block the retreat of the defending Republican forces. But because of dust, or bad weather, the bombs fell onto the civilian sectors of Guernica. The number of casualties can range quite a bit due to the propaganda war that rose over the attack. Until the 1980s, it had been generally accepted that the number of deaths had been over 1,700, but these numbers are known to be exaggerated. Today, historians seem to agree that the real number of deaths was under 300. The operation was noted as a military failure in German war diaries, since none of the objectives were completed. But the rebels could capture the town with no resistance, since everybody had left the town. This seemed to confirm Douhet's theory. After Guernica, Douhet's ideas got attention from none other than the German High Command, who were searching for methods to shorten possible future wars. As they, somewhat openly, broke the Versailles Treaty, preparing for the next World War. Germany's Air Force started even to equip their planes and bombs with sirens to break the enemy with fear even faster. When the war started, Warsaw was the first city to be bombed with a new theory of terror bombing in mind. When captured, German pilots talked about how they even machine-gunned people from sky when they had no more bombs left. First they seemed to hesitate with this, but after a few days of all around-the-clock bombing, they kind of got used to it. As the Germans bombed Warsaw to dust for the whole world to see, the city surrendered to the Germans, who saw it as a proof of concept, attributing the fast victory to the effects of terror bombing, despite the fact that the city was surrounded and starving to death. When Germany started to prepare the invasion of Britain, they had this fast surrender in mind when they dropped bombs all over the major cities of the UK. As in Poland, the Low Countries and France before, the German Air Force started to bomb civilian and military targets alike. Even with daily bombing, the British people did not surrender, they even got more stubborn, and morale never dropped to the point in which they even considered surrender. Proving wrong Douhet's theory, demonstrating that modern, urban societies were robust enough not to capitulate to aerial bombardment. Once the Germans had lost the battle for Britain, the Allied focused on bombing industrial and military areas of Germany. This was doing little to stop Germany though, until a member of Churchill's cabinet, Lord Cherwell, proposed a change in strategies. The new targets for the Royal Air Force and later the US Air Force was to dehouse workers of the factory. By dehouse, they meant to destroy as much living space for the factory workers as possible. The goal was not to kill as many Germans as possible, rather than to lower morale of the workers in a calculated manner, but civilian casualties were of course accepted. For a proper dehousing experience, the Allied tactic was that the first wave of bombers would drop tracer bombs to mark the area to be bombed by the next wave. The second wave would then drop high explosive bombs. with the purpose of destroying the roofs of the houses, so that the next wave could then burn entire blocks of houses with their incendiary bombs. This method of bombing proved to be highly effective in the Allied effort to dehouse German workers. Estimates of the Royal Air Force were that 75% of Hamburg was destroyed, Cologne 60% and Munich 32%. Due to the effective anti-air protection the Reichshauptstadt had, Berlin only was 33% destroyed. Although the Red Army would do its part in elevating the level of destruction to the highest level of all at the end of the war. After the war, the priority was to rebuild as fast as possible for as many people as possible. That is why you often find a row of clearly newer buildings with one or two older ones in the same street, those being the ones that survived the war. And do you know who won't dehouse you from your home? Me. So why don't you subscribe to my channel? Just to be sure that it stays that way. No, just kidding, I don't even know where you live.